Hi, this is Tamsen Granger and Dan Abuhoff in the background there with Tamsen and Dan read the paper. It's December 27th, 2019. With any luck at all, this will be the last podcast, the last Tamsen and Dan read the newspaper podcast of 2019 and of the decade, right? So because of that, we have some very special guests. We have Sadie Abuhoff, Granger Abuhoff, Nico Jasbon, Noel Bourg, and Zeke Abuhoff with us today to comment. Our wonderful helmsman, Dan Abuhoff, is feeling a bit under the weather. So he's going to chime in on a few subjects, and then he may fade into the background. This is totally out of character, but he's going to do his best to make that fade happen. So it's been a busy holiday season, lots of eating, some spectacular eating, and a little bit of culture. We went to the movies the other night. We went to see Little Women. And what did you think, guys? Sadie?
So I've been waiting for this all year because we knew it was coming out at Christmas. So it's a big build-up, a lot to live up to, big movie. I thought it was good. I thought it was different. It was maybe not my absolute favorite version of Little Women, but I thought it was good.
What is your absolute favorite?
I would have to go 1933 with Katharine Hepburn.
Okay, all right.
Isn't that everyone's favorite?
Not a surprising choice, not a weird choice. But yeah, so this is Greta Gerwig, directed.
Correct.
Right. Louisa May Alcott still wrote it.
Arguably.
Ooh.
They bounced around a lot in this one. They took some liberties.
Did you object to those liberties?
Only because it was confusing because everyone's hairstyle pretty much stayed the same. So it's hard to tell what year we were in.
Okay. But in terms of the thread of the story and the story itself.
It was a little discombobulating, I think.
Really?
Because you don't know how much time people are spending in each era. Like, you don't know how long...
No, but what did you get out of it, okay? Overall, did you...
I'm saying it was discombobulating. That's what I thought it was.
Well, what other people think?
Yeah.
I thought it was really good. I thought Sadie pointed this out. Timothée Chalamet may have been miscast there. But I thought that the stars did a really good job keeping things moving. It was interesting. It reminded me a lot of the previous effort with the same star and director, and has folks who are similar feelings about the family and relationships.
Okay, so Greta Gerwig's, what was that movie called?
Lady Bird.
Lady Bird. Okay, that was a family holiday excursion.
Yeah.
A year or two ago. 2 years ago, maybe? So who are the other stars in it? Emma Watson?
Mm-hmm. Laura Dern. Bob Odenkirk.
Meryl Streep.
I don't know the other sisters.
Chris Cooper.
Yeah, Chris Cooper is the neighbor, and Timothée Chalamet as the neighbor's grandson.
Okay, and there's another, I have no idea, the other heartthrob.
The guy from Grantchester. We don't know his name, but he's actually very good looking. As opposed to Timothée Chalamet. Might have been his nephew.
Yeah, we had a lot of mean comments about poor Timothy. That he's too skinny, he's too childlike, he doesn't really come across as a potential love interest as much as one might hope.
Yeah, you want to lust after that teenager. But it's so hard. He looks like a teenager.
He's just a child. Yes.
Well, one thing that's nice about, like, you guys brought up Lady Bird and also this movie, like, the nice part about it is that it's about the friendship and the love between the sisters. That the heart of the story is not necessarily about the romance. They kind of happen as afterthoughts, and I think that this film really emphasizes how much that's an afterthought of the story. As opposed to, and so the love, the real story, the love is between the sisters, and that's really cool.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
I think they also tried to make it a little more realistic, because I know when I was reading Little Women, so many of the characters, with the exception of Joe, but Marmee especially, was so good. You know, so kind of perfect that she became, to me, uninteresting. And it seemed in this movie they tried to give her some layers, some thought that she was fighting to be this good, really, which I thought was an improvement.
Yeah, I think the only character that didn't get that treatment was Beth. But Beth has, like, her sickness. So maybe that adds some depth there a little bit. But she's kind of ignored in favor of Joe and the other sisters. But Joe's the most interesting sister.
The girl who marries Chalamet was supposed to be good?
No.
Okay.
Marmee, the mother.
Mom.
Amy is the one that marries.
All right. So that's the principal problem. You can't keep the girls straight.
But
That's number one. Number two is...
Everyone can except for you.
I mean, you have to.
Everyone.
You have to keep Beth
Can't
at
keep them straight. Too many girls.
You have to keep Beth at a distance.
You know, they should...
Excuse me.
Yeah, what?
Can I speak now?
Yeah.
You have to keep Beth at a distance the whole time because she's kind of the angelic one, so you don't want to humanize her.
You know what they should do? They should do one of those TV shows like Flip It or Forget It or something like that. Because is the house too small? Should they move into a bigger house?
That's great because we were just watching that. Thank you for that insight. Anyway,
you pointed out that all the houses are too nice. That they're too big. These people are so impoverished.
And the food.
And the food is pretty
unbelievable.
Good.
Unbelievable.
The fact that they're saying they're poor and yet they have a house, like a housekeeper or whatever, a cook in their house. So they're employing someone and yet they're really poor and they don't have funds for anything.
Yeah. Only one servant.
At least one review I read pointed out that they had brought in some aspects of our sort of current sensibilities, including, Instagrammable food, and the love of baked goods. And I think also, sort of house lust. I mean, we like nice interiors and intriguing decor. So it was going to be there whether it was authentic or not.
But they do that with Jane Austen movies too. In the Austen movies they always talk about being poor and then they have like 5 servants.
Isn't some of that the other way around too? That like today we say like, oh my goodness, servants, how indulgent. And at the time they were spending nothing on iPhones, but if you wanted, food, you needed to cook, right? So like that was more of a middle class thing then than it would have been now.
Not a single iPhone in the entire movie.
But see, people were selling their hair to get a train ticket.
Sure, that's true. But the way I read it, at least watching the movie, and maybe this is, I have no idea what's historically accurate or not with this, but the way I read that was like, there are some things that they kind of perceive themselves as being more or less middle class, and there's some things they expect to have. They expect to have a house, and they expected to have a feast on Christmas morning, but they did not actually have the funds to guarantee those things all the time. So when they give away their Christmas morning feast, they can't go out and buy another one, right? Like it's something where their perception of what their lifestyle should be maybe is not the same thing as what they can actually afford. You can inherit a house, but that doesn't mean you can afford to put food on the table, or have the style of dresses that you expect. That's kind of what the character Meg runs into, that she has a sense of herself as being like her friend who would have a new dress and who would be able to pay for it. But then when she goes to buy the fabric for that dress, her husband has to remind her, oh no, like you may think of yourself this way, but that's not our actual income.
Yeah, but he backs off from that.
Yeah.
And speaking of dresses, I did see an article saying we're all now going to dress like Little Women.
Oh.
Because it's going to be the in thing.
I
see a lot of disappointed looks here. Yeah, possibly not. Maybe.
I should say the housekeeper is Jane Howdyshell, who's been on Broadway.
Oh.
And a bunch of musicals. And, of course, the publisher was Tracy Letts, who's written plays for Broadway.
Right.
And been on Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of Broadway.
But let me just say, I do think I get the award in the room for having read the most Louisa May Alcott. Because I did read Little Women and Little Men.
Yeah.
And after that came Joe's Boys, which I think probably 3 people in the United States are still living who read Joe's Boys.
I get no credit for being Joe March for Halloween.
You get some...
That is a rough costume for Halloween. You have to explain that to everyone.
You were Joe March for Halloween?
Oh,
yeah, we still have that hat. We still have that hat.
Were you living with us then?
Daniel, it's possible that you missed some of the Halloween costumes during your tenure in New York. Anyway, back to New York. Dan read a review in the New York Times of the latest Harry Connick one-man show. more or less one-man show. It was such a glowing review that he sent me out to the market immediately to buy tickets. And I got tickets, and we zoomed in to see this. It was a celebration of Cole Porter. So what do you think, Dan? Was it worth?
It was great.
Okay.
It's not clear to me why, but I mean, look, I like it. I'm an easy sell. I like Cole Porter. I like Harry Connick. But this was fantastic, and you liked it perhaps even more than I liked it. And what's interesting is they did the first couple of songs, and there's nothing subtle about it. I mean, they do some foolishness, but then they get going, and he starts saying, "Okay, now he walks up, and he says, we're going to do Anything Goes," and he's got a band behind him, which is about 20 pieces, and it's got strings, and it's got horns, and it's got drums, and it's got everything you can possibly imagine, and they just knock it out of the park. It's like huge. And you turned to me at one point after that first song and said, "The band is unbelievable."
Yes. What really stood out were the performances of the band members and the arrangements.
Right.
I mean, it was really over-the-top spectacular. Sometimes we go to these, sort of showpieces for various performers like this, and the music takes kind of backstage. It's really, just a background for the singer. And here it was really an interaction between Harry Connick as singer, as, kind of director, as arranger, and really fun. He made the point that Cole Porter did that as well.
Yeah.
And one of the set pieces was showing how you might arrange a Cole Porter song.
Arrange it and orchestrate it. And he...
and it was brilliant. And it combined
he says,
video projections with the performances on the stage.
I'm going to show you how we orchestrate something. Let's take any song, random song. Okay, Night and Day, that's the one we worked out. And then he worked through it, because you can't do it randomly, right? And it was kind of very interesting. But in the NPR interview I read, they said that makes a little difference. He's doing the orchestrations for his band, and the band is participating in the way they put this all together. So that's why the performances are so fabulous. They're playing it exactly the way he wants, and they rehearse it.
Yeah, this is a really curated band. Some of these guys had been with him for many, many, many years.
Yeah.
Sadie and I went to a Harry Connick performance about 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And some of the same guys were in it. Yeah. So it's really a seasoned crew there. And he's fine.
Oh, he's better than fine.
He's fine. But, well, listen, Sadie and I also went to Hugh Jackman a few years ago.
Yeah.
And Hugh Jackman, I thought, was just mesmerizing. That man has charisma.
Well, see, that's an interesting point. I just, I can't really speak to that. You can, because you can compare.
He's a terrific performer.
I think Harry Connick has a lot of charisma, too.
Not as much as Hugh Jackman, and what he's got going for him is really the musicianship.
But, why are you trying to compare people to Wolverine, that's two different categories here.
Yeah.
But I think Harry Connick was great when we saw him, and you said he was great in the Pajama Game. So I don't understand why we're so surprised that this is great. He does great things.
We're not surprised. I'm more surprised.
We're not surprised. We're relieved that we spent all that money and it was great.
It's like when I said, actually, it wasn't even that much money. That was also a surprise. But as I said to Tamsen at the time, I go and see how Hugh Jackman, who I know that you, Tamsen, have seen in concert, can match up to this. He doesn't have the musicianship. He doesn't have the background. He's not, the kind of band leader and musician that Harry Connick is. There's no comparison. And you said that's absolutely correct. But I will tell you that when Hugh Jackman performed, he is so charismatic. People in the audience were like leaning out with tears in their eyes. They were like captivated in a way that's not going on here.
Yeah, he auctioned off his clothes at the end of the performance. This is Hugh Jackman, to raise money for Broadway
AIDS,
Cares. Yeah. And, people were coming to blows. I mean, he raised a lot of money.
Thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
All right, they're both great.
All right, well, thank you, Dan.
Yes.
And
I'll give you another show in that room.
Feel better.
Yeah.
So here we go. What else did we do this weekend? All right, let's get back to articles. All right, so speaking of Instagrammable baked goods, there happens to be a cookie war going on in Italy. Now, Italy, we love Italy. And we love everything about the food in Italy. And we think of Italy as everything is, fresh and out of the kitchen of some wonderful older Italian mama. But turns out their mass-produced cookies are not too shabby. I can say that from personal experience. I have some real favorites there. But apparently, things are coming to blows. What can you tell us about that?
Well, there's a lot of competition. So you might be familiar with a little thing called Nutella. So Nutella is famous for their spread, and people say in the category of chocolate spreads they dominate. I'm not sure why that's its own category, but I guess it is. And they for years have had this kind
of course, it's its own category. It's not peanut butter.
No,
it's
not
chocolate spread. But is there anything besides Nutella?
Well, there really, for a long time, there wasn't. So,
So they kind of had the market cornered for mass-produced.
Well, there's the knockoffs of, like, Skippy does a version of it. Jif does a version of it.
But in Italy, the next closest competitor for years was at, 2% of the market or something like that.
Uh-huh.
So, Nutella was doing gangbusters business for years. And then a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, Pandistelli, forgive me if I'm getting the name wrong, Pandistelli puts out a lot of cookies, okay? And they say, in Italy, it's pretty normal to eat cookies for breakfast, cookie as a snack. Like you said, we think of it all as pasta, tomatoes, etc. But here they, all the time, have just a little cookie for breakfast.
They don't eat much breakfast.
Well, it turns out they do. It's just all cookies.
Yeah, they'll have cookies for breakfast.
They interview people that seem to be eating the whole bag of cookies for breakfast.
Well, that's why they said they keep them small, the bag's small.
No, that's
the
one.
problem with the Nutella cookies is that they're in a big bag, and there's a bunch of cookies in there, and people are buying the bags, and they feel like a lot of the younger people in Italy are gaining weight.
Yeah, so we're getting ahead of themselves. You guys still have the image of Italy that you've always had, Mom, of people, svelte people in suits riding mopeds, while eating gelato magically and sipping espressos. But apparently there's a lot of people just, shoving cookies in their face while they go to work. And so a year and a half ago or so, Pandistelli said, you know what? I smell weakness. We could make a spread as well. And they said, you know what? Nutella's spread is made from hazelnuts, largely from Turkey. Outrageous.
Right.
Our spread...
Not very patriotic.
No. Our spread is made from Italian hazelnuts.
Which just happen to be superior.
Yes. And they happen to own a lot of those trees. Meanwhile, the environmentalists are up in arms that everyone's planting all these hazelnut trees, bad for biodiversity. Anyway, so they come out, the cookie people come out with a spread. So the spread people, over the course, they say they were already working in the last 10 years to the tune of $130 million in research into their own cookies.
Nutella
Yeah,
was.
so Nutella comes out with the bag of cookies that have spread in the cookies. And then Pandistelli says, no, we're going to come out with our own cookies that have the spread in them also. And the ones that you talked about being two to a package, that's Pandistelli. They say they're so decadent, it's just an occasional dessert. We want to be both health conscious and environmental, so only have these two cookies. And tell us look, there's a whole bag of cookies. Yeah. Buy the whole bag of cookies.
But I thought some of their strategies were pretty sneaky. Isn't it Nutella that introduced the cookie abroad, in other countries first? Mm-hmm. Hoping that Italians would be traveling and see these and try them and come back and be demanding them in Italy. So by the time they were introduced in Italy, there was already a thriving demand.
Yeah, it's a little bit... Go ahead.
I was going to say, I also think they didn't want the cookies to be too terrible if they brought them into Italy first. If the people outside of Italy didn't really like the cookies, they probably wouldn't have brought them into Italy, because that's really the people who are after...
So it was test marketing.
Yeah, it was test marketing.
It was also marketing.
It's a little bit more romantic of a test market location than Kansas City. We're trying out the cookies in Paris. If they do well in Paris, we'll release them in Milan.
And I also thought it was funny that the Pandistella people, theoretically, the employers are not even allowed to say the word Nutella.
Yeah, they can't. Yeah, they're very...
The competition is very serious.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. They see themselves as so they belong. One final note on this: they belong to the Barilla company, which you might know from like the pasta ingredients that you buy in the store.
Right.
Versus Nutella's, the Ferreros. So these two big families / companies have been dominating the Italian food market for a long time. And they're two of the few Italian companies left that you would know. That you've heard of Nutella, you've heard of Barilla. That's not true of many Italian companies. That's part of why it catches people's interest.
All right, so that sounds fun. I'm all for cookie wars. If cookies are just going to get tastier and tastier, that works for me. Meanwhile, Sadie, what's happening with Poland and braziers?
So who knew Poland is the capital for bras? Apparently, all methodology and correct methodology around bra fitting, anything around building bras, all of that stuff came from Poland. Poland is the expert. So there's a big article in the Times about Poland being the expert in bras and how the United States is doing it wrong. Everyone's wearing the wrong size bra, which we already know. And if you're having trouble, the solution is to go Polish. And a woman travels abroad to Poland and travels around and tries on different bras in different places and has an experience. Listen to this. She said, "I braced my hands on the wall for balance. The precision and awkwardness of this method gave me absolute confidence in it." That's in reference to a bra fitting. And then it said, Miss Mihalchek observed, offering notes to her staff in Polish, "I'm not sure what she was saying, but it sounded expert." And she said, "There are no fluffy couches at this factory." So there's some really serious lingerie towns in Poland where that is what they do. They do a lingerie, and they're great at fitting bras, and they're great at figuring out what size is correct for you.
So did this woman who wrote the article, did she succeed in getting the perfect bra?
She did. She got 5 or 6 bras, and I was expecting them to all be like $200, but they're all like $40, $50, $60. And she said that oftentimes what happens in the U.S. is people just fit you for sizes that they happen to have in the store, and they don't fit you for your true size, because most bra stores end at like double D or triple D or something in that realm. So they just fit you at that and stop instead of giving you your true size. And she said the bras felt like they were tattooed onto her, which is how a bra is supposed to fit.
All right. But what does this mean for the future? Are we all going to be, somebody going to start importing these? I think you have to import the Polish bras. You have to import the Polish bra fitting system.
Right.
I don't think the fitters are going to move.
Well, I mean, you never know. But I think there are a lot more measurements you can take than just the standard 2 measurements that they usually do in the store. So you learn how to do the Polish bra fitting, and there are a lot more stores in the U.S. that are starting to carry Polish bras.
No, but the reason why we're all wearing the wrong bras in the U.S. because we don't want to be fitted. That's still going to be the problem.
But you can fit yourself. You can measure yourself.
Are these really good-looking bras?
I mean,
are they attractive?
They don't show any pictures, but I would assume they are. They mention things like lace and colors, so
Okay.
Sure.
I gotta say, because, my gut image of Polish and lingerie is not connecting.
For me, let me tell you something about bras.
Okay, I'm all ears.
I'm more interested, as someone who's struggled my entire life, I'm more interested in technology and physics than what color and lace and all of that. But they use technical terms like, let me find it.
Updraft?
No, I think it's like pendulous, as opposed to how saggy, they say pendulous.
Okay.
And
Fantastic.
They have scandalous things like Strapgate. There are a lot of like online forums where they talk about, the importance of straps versus bands versus blah, blah, blah. Okay. So there's a lot of crazy discussion.
All right, lots to learn. All right.
There is a lot to learn.
Okay.
But it gives me hope that one day I might have a correct fitting bra.
All right. Nice to know. Zeke,
No.
what can you tell us?
Yeah, what's your take on this story?
About
Zeke?
sleeper spies?
Sleepers, but no, it's Noel's thing.
Oh, well.
I thought it was...
I mean, we were going to be a joint
What's mine
joint
is
team.
yours. What's mine is yours.
Yeah.
Guys,
we're
you're married
married.
now.
We're
You're married now.
So it turns out sleeper spies are real, which I guess we already knew, but this story is specifically about a young boy who is the son of 2 sleeper spies who had run away to Canada, and they were sleeper spies in Canada. They gave birth to 2 boys, and they started a diaper business, which I guess was their cover.
Wait a minute, they were spying in Canada?
They were in Canada. I don't know if they were spying on Canada, but that's where they were sent.
And these are Russians?
These are Russians.
Russians spying in... They're living in Canada. They're spying somewhere.
Spying somewhere.
Okay.
Getting information there. And they started a diaper business, and they had the 2 young boys. Eventually, they moved to the U.S., they had a period living in France. The family moved to the U.S. in 1999 and eventually lived in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And then while they were in the United States, the FBI found out the parents, and the parents were arrested while these 2 boys were still living with them. And basically, the parents were okay. They ended up getting sent back to Russia. There was a swapsies with American spies.
Right.
But the story is about whether or not Canada was going to give these 2 boys, or specifically Mr. Vavilov, Alexander Vavilov, the younger son, Canadian citizenship, and they ruled in his favor.
So he will be Canadian.
He will be Canadian.
He's going to stay.
He
Well, he was
Okay.
renewing his
So-
passport. He already had a Canadian passport from before. He went to renew it. They rejected him, and then eventually on appeal he got that decision reversed. Because there's some debate as to whether he should be eligible for a Canadian passport.
So has this information been known for a while? It sounds a lot like the TV show The Americans.
Sure does.
Yes.
Is The Americans based on that, or is this just, or a lot of this happens and the writers just...
Yeah, the parents were arrested in 2010, and this story of these parents was what inspired The Americans. The backstory of the Vavilov family is the stuff of a spy thriller, which is, it helped inspire The Americans.
So it's real. It's going on.
Yeah.
It's real. It's
I wonder
happening
how
right
the parents
now.
are doing in Russia, because the people who got repatriated in The Americans didn't look that happy.
We know. Look to your left. Look to your right. One of these people is a spy.
Why do I think
That's what this
not
teaches you.
Okay. All
They
right.
are among us.
All right. And even more spooky is your next story, which is about ghost kitchens.
Ooh, what's that? Isn't it no
What's a
longer
ghost
Halloween? It's not a regular ghost, it's a ghost kitchen. So it turns out that's a hot new kind of kitchen.
Do they
It's
wear
not-
the chains they forged in life?
Ooh.
Good reference.
It's not a Christmas ghost. It's a ghost kitchen. So regular commercial kitchens you expect to find in back of a restaurant. In this case, we have commercial kitchens that operate without any kind of storefront.
Well, we know there's a lot of delivery going on from all kinds of restaurants, okay? Not just pizza places anymore, okay? But the point is here, these kitchens don't have seating, right? There's no restaurant. There's no takeout. It's only delivery.
It's only delivery. And there are a couple interesting implications for this. One, I guess, is that it's uniquely possible now in a way it wasn't before because of delivery apps. Because you can, as long as you're, I guess, properly permitted or whatnot, you can list yourself on Grubhub, on DoorDash, on Uber Eats, and have a pretty good access to your customers without having any physical advertising out there. So that seems to be what enabled this, supposed recent surge in ghost kitchens. But then beyond that, there are other implications too, like how it doesn't. You can take advantage of smaller areas to be making this food, and you can take advantage of a greater, I guess, range of cuisines within that small area. So it describes situations where you can have one kitchen that's producing Indian food, producing pizza, producing, miscellaneous other cuisines, and that one kitchen sends out deliveries to all different places. On the delivery app, that might appear as several different options. Are you going to order from the Indian place or are you going to order from the pizza place? It's actually all coming from the same building.
Yeah. But, it's one thing to be putting together a whole restaurant in a location, but to squeeze in some kitchens in very dense commercial areas where there might potentially be a lot of people to order, I guess is economically easier to do.
Yeah, this article describes, this New York Times article describes how this seems to be popular now, or at least on the rise, in really densely populated coastal cities. So big cities like New York and San Francisco.
I think Miami,
that's where
too.
people are exploring this because the real estate is at such a premium, and there are so many people in a small area who want delivery.
Right.
So it seems like there's an opportunity there. Also, being in New York and San Francisco and taking advantage of this technological advantage through the apps, we get the attention of techie people. Because people from the tech world who are interested in this as a new wave of the restaurant business. They want to get in on this and see where it can go. So there are these ghost kitchens aren't just, the next location of some restaurant you already know. There are in many cases startups that are built entirely around this concept. So you have places that are trying to set up these very efficient kitchens with a range of cuisines, and they want to really take advantage of the technology.
Yeah.
In other words, so you're having some vertical integration.
Yeah.
Like DoorDash is investing in the ghost kitchens, etc.
There's one investor who reportedly invested $400 million in one of the new ghost kitchen companies. And then another investor that's kind of interesting is David Chang of the Netflix documentary series that we watched. And he also helped open up Momofuku. He was the restaurant operator behind Momofuku. And he has some problem. He's kind of curious about how this will ultimately affect the cuisine as well, because, tech companies, Amazon's not necessarily worried about the quality and how beautiful it's presented. And so he's concerned about how that could affect the quality of the food as well.
Yeah, he has some reservations about how tech people can interact with food people.
There's a cultural difference. They have different priorities in their business.
Right.
So normally, what you end up with is tech companies or apps that can't exactly assure you that, the restaurant has gotten your order, and restaurants with terrible websites. There's still a bit of a chasm there that
right. That's very true. Now there are other concerns. One is that this is going to be the death of restaurants. That we're not going to go out together and see each other. That places like McDonald's, not even necessarily talking about fine dining, but McDonald's not going to exist anymore. We'll just sit in our home and McDonald's comes to us. But that way we don't, have any interaction at McDonald's. And the article points out that in some communities, it's a community gathering place.
Yeah.
So there is that.
Yeah, there's also the idea that if your community is built around McDonald's, you have bigger problems. So I personally am not worried.
All right.
Really?
Yeah,
No, I'm not trying to call
we
out.
have a little bit of
I'm
a
not trying to
food
attack
snob.
those communities.
Let
but
me
what
just say-
I am saying is that the idea that a new convenient way for people to get food is going to destroy the public square that we value so dearly, that's at this place, this restaurant that many people are consider themselves above visiting, that doesn't really say anything good about the public square at this point.
I think you'll start seeing incentives for people to come in person. You even see it with Little Caesars, the whole incentive to go and just pick up a thing of pizza instead of ordering it for delivery. There's an incentive to go and pick it up from
What's the incentive?
The price.
They'll give a good price.
Oh, really? It's
Yeah.
a cheaper price?
And it's hot and ready.
Uh-huh. Well, the nice thing about the ghost kitchens is, though, you can craft menus that are specific to delivery. Because not everything you eat in a restaurant tastes good by the time it gets to your house. And that can be very frustrating. Even for the restaurateurs, they're not out to sell bad food. So when they put together a takeout order and it gets to somebody's house and it's awful, that's not a great thing either. So you can actually put together a menu of things that hold their texture well, reheat well, etc. So
But
there's
it's
some
not
potential.
even clear if it's going to take off, though, because in the article they describe a startup that was entirely focused on this concept from a few years ago that closed its doors, and how their kitchen
Maple,
yeah,
right?
Maple.
Wasn't it had famous people involved? Was Chang involved in that?
I forget what it says in the.
Somebody big was involved.
But yeah, so that closed down, and their space is a space that is now being used by Yule, the terribly named new company in this space. So it remains to be seen if this is going to catch on and be sustainable and really grow outwards and destroy our cherished McDonald's.
Let me tell you, Zeke, if you go to Dunkin' Donuts on a Saturday morning and sit and eat your donut in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, it's quite a community. It's everyone who comes back from church and gets their Dunkin' Donuts. It's not a bad thing.
That sounds nice.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think there is something to say that, like, some communities that maybe if all they have is McDonald's, maybe McDonald's becomes even more important in those situations. This one suggests, like, it's a hub for voter registration and a daily ritual of senior citizens.
You can't go around hollowing out communities and reducing them to relying on McDonald's and then turn around and say, oh, please, we need McDonald's. You're our hero, McDonald's. That's a bigger problem of what's happening to towns that don't have anything but McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts as a place for people to gather.
And that is a problem for another day, I think.
All right, so let's move on. Let's move on to a quick museum update. This is the time of year when I typically travel down to Washington, D.C. to intersect with Sadie Abuhoff, because that's where Sadie works and lives. And when I go down there, I always go to the National Gallery. And by George, I had a great time at the National Gallery of Art in Washington.
I was receiving text messages all day long, like, don't worry, I'm at my leisure. Don't worry, I have plenty to do.
Well,
don't worry, I'm at my leisure.
Well, here's the thing. I just went to really 2 exhibitions in the museum during the whole, I don't know how many hours I was there, maybe 3. One was on Verrocchio, one was on pastels, and they were terrific. Verrocchio was especially fun. Sculptor, painter, we mainly know him as a sculptor from the Renaissance, and maybe you don't even know him. Does anybody know Verrocchio?
Well, I've heard many things about him in the last 2 weeks, so I know about him.
Yeah, compared to knowing about Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo, people haven't heard of him. But guess what? Verrocchio was amazing, all right? The exhibition is amazing. It has examples of his work in marble, examples of his work in bronze, terracotta, and painting. He was the teacher of Ghirlandaio, who was the teacher of Michelangelo. He was the teacher of Perugino, who was the teacher of Raphael. He was the teacher of Botticelli. You've heard of Botticelli. And he was the teacher of Da Vinci. Okay? Da Vinci was one of his assistants. And when you look at some of these paintings and some of these works, you see all these people in those paintings and artworks. You see their influence. So he was tremendously influential. I had a great tour guide there. And, of course, I'm a fan of tour guides, but I've had some real stinkers at the National Gallery. This woman was knowledgeable and entertaining and really brought Verrocchio alive for us. Unfortunately, that show closes pretty soon, January 12th. So it's tough to see it, but it's just a magnificent, very fun show. And also while I was there, I went to a teeny weeny little exhibition about pastels called A Touch of Color. You know what pastels are?
Yes.
They are chalks, all right? Brilliant colors, don't think like pastels, light blue, light pink. They're all different fabulous colors. And I've said before, they're specifically terrific for doing portraits. Because you know how you powder your face? Okay? It's not just to soak up the oils, okay, and sweat. Actually, powder is little discrete particles, okay, that each reflect the light at a slightly different angle. So to powder your face can create actually a wonderful glow. This is why I powder my face. Mm-hmm. And
your nose more specifically.
Yeah, well, only at Christmas time is when I want my nose to glow. But anyway, so when you do a portrait in a pastel, there's almost a liveliness, a terrific three-dimensionality and expressiveness of a portrait in pastel. The problem is it doesn't hold. Okay, it's hard to fix, it smudges off, etc. But during the 17th century, especially the 18th century, there was a certain enthusiasm for pastels, and some of the greats here were on display, including Rosalba Carriere, an 18th century female person who did had a terrific career in portrait pastels. Pastels are used on paper, on vellum, on a variety of surfaces. And then there were some more modern pastels there as well, including from our buddy Degas and Whistler and even more recent painters. So that was just fun. That was a little treasure. And then the other exhibition that is a must-see that I won't see because it's in Spain. It's at the Prado.
Let's go.
Yeah, well, that would be fabulous, but it closes February 2nd. So it's hard to... I love when the New York Times has these articles about these things that are so terrific, and you can't possibly get there in time. Anyway, it's a show of two mistresses as opposed to masters of the art of painting, both from the 16th century, Sofonisba Anguissola and Lavinia Fontana. Now, you've heard me say Sofonisba Anguissola before because her self-portraits are terrific, and in my mind, she looks a lot like Noel Bourg. Okay, and I always think of Noel when I see her portraits. She does charming portraits that are kind of spontaneous and adorable, especially of her family members. Her little brother holding a dog. The dog is squiggling around. The brother has this funny little smirk on his face. Just doesn't seem like the 16th century. So she's terrific. She comes from a fun family, an interesting family in Cremona, Italy, and her parents had this wonderful idea of first names. Sofonisba, she had a sister Lucia, Minerva, Europa, and others. They were very well educated. The interesting thing about Sofonisba is she becomes the court painter for Philip II in Spain. Well, that's not the only reason she's there. Actually, Philip II has a new wife, Elizabeth of Valois, who is 14. Sofonisba is hired to be her lady-in-waiting. Basically, she's Elizabeth's nanny. They become very, very close. Unfortunately, Elizabeth will die only 9 years later. But Sofonisba has a fascinating career, wonderful stuff to look at. Lavinia Fontana, she's okay. But really, in my mind, it would be fun to see Sofonisba's work in person. That kind of wraps it up for what we need to talk about. We're looking forward to the end of the decade. New year is coming. Anybody have things they're looking forward to or disappointed in about the past decade or the coming decade?
I think scooters are going to continue to be on a rampage. Disappointed e-readers never really totally happened 1,000%, but whatever.
Yeah, I feel stupid reading my Kindle. I'm the only person around. But we went to a whole movie about how the publishing business is reeling about, having thought that e-readers would be the thing. What else? Robots?
Robots everywhere.
Maybe more robots.
I know there's a robot in the
robots.
giant food now.
There's one in the supermarket.
It's
Googly eyes.
haunting.
I'm not sure what we're supposed to do with it.
Yeah.
Nunu. Name them all Nunu.
Nunu. Finally, how about, well, I gotta say one of the big things in my mind about the past decade was the kind of reemergence of TV shows.
It's a golden era of TV, and we'll see if that continues. Maybe we'll shift into the golden era of podcasts.
Well, it depends what you call TV, though, because people are watching short-form shows on their phones or their tablets or whatever. They're not necessarily watching on TV.
Well, I'm thinking of non-in-the-theater shows. And also the idea, again, the short form episodic format. is
You
kind
see
of
movie
revived.
stars coming to streaming services rather than just staying with the big movie companies.
And writing talent as well. Yeah. Yeah. Whereas a few years ago it was like TV, that's for idiots.
Yeah.
My hope is that my Xfinity bill goes down at some point because of this.
Your Xfinity bill may go down, but other bills from other services may go up.
But I just need some to go down if others are going up.
Zeke, you looking forward to anything besides robots?
I think the balance of sports that are popular is going to shift. I
That's
think
interesting.
football is going to decline, and other
All
more-
highlight.
Yeah, it's going to be all highlight.
The
from
decade
now
of
on.
highlight.
Well, I think you're going to see the trends of like all of the retired football players having so many health challenges. That's going to have an effect on how football is managed in the future. And I think that's going to change a lot. I think you're going to see maybe athletes being paid in college for sports.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of different changes.
And where do you see hockey?
I think hockey's on the rise. I don't think there aren't as many health issues in retirement in hockey as you have with football.
We can take advantage of this moment where Dad is out of the room due to his sickness to say, football is ending. New York Times has been right all along. Football is on its last legs. Surely everyone can agree it's twilight days for football.
All right, so we're going to wish everybody a happy new year. We're going to wish a speedy recovery to...
For everyone's sake, for Dad. For everyone's sake.
Dan Abuhoff. This is Tamsen Granger with the cast of thousands here. And we'll see you next week with Tamsen and Dan.
See you next
Read the
decade.
paper.
See you next time. Happy New Year.